Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Johanna, Johanna, wake up, my dear. Do you know what time it is? I need to go to Alderman Judd's house soon, and I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Your mother has gone to Parson Lupin's. Johanna, dear, can you hear me? Mr. Oakley, who makes glasses, said this outside Johanna's room. After a moment, Johanna replied softly, I'm coming, Dad. I'll be down in a moment. Don't rush, my dear, take your time. Mr. Oakley went back downstairs and sat in the room behind the shop. Soon, Johanna, his beloved daughter, joined him. She was really beautiful and graceful. She was 18 years old, but she looked younger. Her face showed sweetness and intelligence, which seemed to challenge aging. Her hair was shiny black, and her eyes were deep blue. She didn't have a strong or stern beauty, but her face showed grace and sweetness. You could look at her face all day, like reading a fascinating book that makes you feel happy and thoughtful. Her voice had a hint of sadness, making it sound even more musical, though sad. It seemed to show that deep down in her heart, there was some sorrow or unspoken grief. Maybe there was a dream she had that seemed impossible to achieve, or a memory of past happiness that turned into sadness. It was like a cloud covering the sunny sky, casting a shadow, but still letting some brightness shine through, though the sadness was still there. I made you wait, Dad, she said, hugging her father. Don't worry, dear. Your mother is busy with Mr. Lupin's prayer meeting today, so I haven't had breakfast. I think I should fire Sam. Why, Dad? What did he do? Nothing, and that's the problem. I had to close the shop myself because he said he couldn't do it as his aunt had a toothache. That's a bad excuse, Dad, Johanna said as she prepared breakfast. He'll be gone today. His month is over. But your mom might give me trouble because his aunt is in Mr. Lupin's group. But mark my words, it's August 20th. It is August 20th, Johanna said, sitting down and crying. I tried to control it, but I couldn't, Dad. I knew Mom was out, and I should be with you. I prayed for strength because it's August 20th. Johanna spoke through tears, burying her face in her hands. Mr. Oakley looked shocked and worried, staring at his daughter, who was crying like a child, as if he just woke from a dream. Oh, Johanna, he said, what's wrong? Tell me, my dear, unless you want to make me sad. I'll tell you, Dad, she said. I didn't plan to say anything, but I thought I could keep my sadness to myself. But it's too hard, and I had to tell you. If you didn't look at me so kindly, if I didn't know you loved me, I could keep it a secret. But I can't. My dear, the old man said, you're right. I love you. What would I do without you? Your mother used to make me happy, but lately, with Mr. Lupin and her activities, I hardly see her, and when I do, it's not satisfying. Tell me, my dear, what's bothering you, and I'll fix it. I didn't join the city train bands for nothing. Dad, I know you'd do anything for me, but you can't bring the dead back to life. If today passes and I don't see or hear from him, I know he hasn't found a home for me like he promised. He must have found trouble instead. He said he would. She cried bitterly, and Mr. Oakley didn't know what to do or say. My dear, who is he? I hope you don't mean. Shh, Dad, shh. I know who you're thinking of, but I feel like he's gone. So, please, don't speak badly of him. You're talking about Mark and Gestory. Yes, and even if he had faults, he truly loved me. My dear, I won't say anything to upset you. What's making today so sad for you? I'll tell you, Dad. 2 years ago today, we last met in the temple garden. He had an argument with his uncle, Mr. Grant. Dad, Mark wasn't at fault because… All right, dear, you don't need to say more about that. Girls usually defend their lovers. But there are different ways to tell a story. Yes, but why did Mr. Grant want him to study something he hated? My dear, if Mark truly loved you and wanted to marry you, he should have been willing to do something he didn't like to provide for both of you. Yes, but Dad, you know it's tough for a young person to give in completely when they disagree. So, Mark and his uncle argued, and it escalated. Maybe if Mr. Grant had been kinder, Mark would have listened. Yeah, that's often how it goes. Mr. Oakley nodded. There are always excuses. But keep going, dear. Tell me what happened next. I will, Dad. 2 years ago today, we met. He said he and his uncle argued and couldn't make up. We talked a lot. I bet you did. And then he said he had to go find his luck, the luck he wanted to share with me. He had a chance to go to India, and if he succeeded, he'd come back with enough to start a new life in London, doing something he liked more than law. Interesting. What did he say after that? He told me he loved me. And you believed him. Dad, if you heard him, you'd believe him too. His voice was so sincere, like nothing fake. Sometimes you just know when someone's telling the truth, and that's how it felt when Mark spoke to me. So you think it's easy for a young man who isn't doing well at home to go somewhere else and get rich? Is being lazy rewarded in other countries? You're being too hard on him, Dad. You don't really know him. I don't want to judge anyone harshly. You probably understand him better than I do since you know him more personally. Go ahead and tell me everything. We agreed, Dad, that on this day 2 years ago, he'd either come to me or send a message about where he was. If I didn't hear from him, I was supposed to think the worst, and I can't help but think that now. But it's not the end of the day yet. I know, but I'm not very hopeful, Dad. Do you think dreams can predict the future? I'm not sure, my child. I don't usually believe something just because I dreamed it, but I've heard some stories where dreams turned out to be true. Maybe this is one of those times. I had a dream last night. I was sitting on the beach, and all I could see was endless water. The waves were loud, and the wind was getting stronger. In the distance, I saw a ship fighting the waves. Sometimes the waves lifted it high, and other times it sank deep. I could only see the top of the mast. The storm kept getting worse, and I heard a strange sound. A flash of light showed me they were trying to get help. Father, I knew Mark and Jestry was on that ship. My heart told me, but I couldn't do anything to help. I could only watch in silence and fear. Then I heard a cry, a loud, wailing cry that told me the ship's fate. I saw it break apart and then silence. But soon after, there was another cry, the desperate cry of those who sank with the ship. It was a terrible sound, one that stays with you and haunts your dreams. And this all happened in your dream? Yes, Father, it did. And you couldn't do anything to help? No, I couldn't. I felt completely powerless. It sounds very sad. It was, and it gets worse. The ship sank, and the cry I heard was from those clinging to the wreckage, barely holding on to hope. They had nowhere else to turn for safety. Nowhere. Everything was lost, and despair filled the air. I wanted to scream, to beg for mercy for those brave souls who trusted their lives to the sea. As I strained to help, I saw a small figure in the water. It was a man clinging to a piece of the wreckage. I knew it was Mark and Jestry. But, my dear, you can't be upset by a dream. It made me sad. I reached out to save him. I heard him cry out my name, pleading for help. But it was hopeless. He fought the waves as hard as he could. He couldn't hold on any longer, and I watched him vanish before my eyes. Don't say you saw him, my dear. Say you think you saw him. It was a thought I won't forget for a long time. Well, my dear, it's just a dream. And regardless of anything concerning Mark and Jestry that might upset you, you made a rather foolish agreement. Think about all the problems he might face in keeping his promise to you. You know I care a lot about your happiness. If Mark had been a good and hard-working man, I wouldn't have objected to your relationship. But believe me, Johanna, a young man who spends money easily but can't earn any is not the best choice for a husband, and that was Mark and Jestry. But let's keep this between us. We won't tell your mother. If you can tell me where and how he left England, I'll try to find out what happened to him, despite my concerns. I don't know anything else, Father. We said goodbye and never saw each other again. All right, Johanna, stop crying. As I go to Alderman Judd's, I'll think about it. Maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. Mark is a decent-looking lad, and he's probably smart if he puts his mind to it. But if he's wandering around aimlessly, you're better off without him. And as for him being dead, don't jump to conclusions. These types of guys have a way of popping back up somehow, like a bad penny. The spectacle maker's kind tone offered more comfort than his words. Johanna was glad she told her father about Mark and Jestry. Now she had someone to talk to about him without hiding her feelings. After her father left, she felt better, like some of the fear from her dream had disappeared. She sat quietly for a while, lost in thought, until Sam, the shop boy, came into the room and said, "Miss Johanna, what if I go to the docks and try to find Mr. Mark and Jestry for you? I overheard everything, and if I find him, I'll sort him out." "What do you mean?" Johanna asked. "I mean, I won't stand for it. Didn't I tell you more than 3 weeks ago that you're the one I'm fond of? Didn't I say that when my aunt passed away, I'd inherit the soap and candle business and make you my wife?" Johanna didn't say anything back. She just got up and left the room. Her heart was too full of sadness and worry to laugh at Sam's affectionate words like she usually did. So, Sam was left to think about his feelings all alone. Darn it," he muttered when he went back to the shop. "I always thought there was some other guy, and now I know it. I'm so mad I could tear my hair out for ever agreeing to work here. Curse him. I hope he's at the bottom of the sea, eaten up by now. Oh, I'd love to smash everything. If I had my way, I'd just march right into society and show them what's what, and they'd all go down." In his anger, Mr. Sam accidentally knocked over a display of spectacles, causing them to crash loudly. This wasn't part of his plan to show society what's what, and he knew Mr. Oakley wouldn't be happy about it. "I've really done it this time," he muttered. "But no worries. I'll try my old trick whenever I break something. I'll blame it on old Oakley. He's so gullible. You can make him believe anything. Remember this morning when he believed I couldn't work because I said my aunt had a toothache? That was a good one. But I'll get back at that guy who took Johanna away from me. I'll show him what a broken heart can do. He won't live long enough to need a pair of spectacles. Mark my words. My name's Sam Bolt, after all."